welcome to this very special Adobe Live Spotlight. We are here with two amazing, awesome, creative, some of my favorite people, Armin and Bryony. Hi, hello from Under Consideration. Tell us a little bit about you, intro yourselves, let us know who you are, what you do, and maybe where you are.
All right. Well, hello, everyone.
He's
I'm
Armin.
Bryony. Uh, um,
Oh, just a
are
second. Oh,
currently
there we go. We're back. There was a storm this morning over there, so we may have a little bit
little
of jumpy
shed
connection. I
up
think the
house,
weather.
which you.
Sorry, we're back. Sorry. Yes, connection was getting
Oh,
weird. I was letting everyone know
oh,
there is storm in the area, and so may get a little bit jumpy,
oh.
but I think we're back.
Actually, it's my bad. I'm on the wrong Wi-Fi. Give us 1 second.
Okay, no problem. We got it. And while we do
All right.
that, chat, I do want to point out that we have some awesome content coming up right after this. Every day, we have community shows that happen from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. So stick around from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. We will have another community show coming up. And I believe today is going to be Creative Design with our friend Izzy. And it looks like we are back and good to go. We did it.
Yep.
Good work, everyone. All right. So let's run it from the top. Armin,
Yes.
Bryony, what do you do? Who are you? Where are you?
All
All right.
right. Well, hello, everyone. In case you missed it, I'm Armin,
I'm Bryony.
and we're currently broadcasting from a little shed that sits right next to our main house in Bloomington, Indiana, where we do our podcasting and fun stuff like this.
Yes. And you are co-founders of Under Consideration. Tell us a little bit about what that is. It's kind of a broad umbrella of things. So tell us a little bit about top level. What do you do?
Yeah, well, the whole idea is to serve the design industry, but it started as a design firm, kind of that traditional mindset of what a traditional design firm in Brooklyn would look like, but life has happened, things have happened, and a cascading ripple effect of things have landed us doing very strange things like events and things like that, that are the things that we seek from the design industry and haven't found in one way or another. And so we create them.
So to get started in our conversation, it's interesting that you said that it's kind of like spiraled up into something else. I think a lot of creatives sometimes will get stuck in like, we're trying to do this thing. It seems like it has grown. What has that process been like for you to like roll with the punches or say yes to things, say no to things? How have you kind of refined that process of letting Under Consideration turn into all these things?
Yeah, I think everybody starts out with a plan, and no matter how well you plan for that plan, things are going to happen that are out of your control, or life is going to happen, or politics are going to happen, or financial crises are going to happen. And another thing that's important to note is that Under Consideration is only two people. It's just me and Bryony. We have no employees.
And that's one of the main reasons why we can do what we can do. But continue, and then I'll jump into that.
Yeah, so being only two of us, we've been able to adjust on the fly, depending on what the situation is. So when we first started our business, we wanted to do like 50% client work and 50% our own projects, which at the time included the original design blog, Speak Up. But then it turned out that 100% of the time was client work because we had gotten so much word of mouth. Then through life, we ended up moving to Austin, Texas, and we wanted to continue that balance. But then that's
The
when
recession.
the recession happened of 2008. So that meant 0% clients, and all of a sudden we had to figure out how to make our own our 50% be 100%. So it's just been a lot of adjusting on the go and sticking with a few principles of what we want to do.
Yep. And I actually was thinking about this morning that you all have kind of this, it's not even like a can do attitude. It's like a can done that like things just happen and you just go for it. And I love hearing that you've had to adapt with the business of like, cool, we don't need to figure out what to do. We just need to do it. And we're doing 100% of this now. We're doing 50% of that now. And we'll come back to that when we look at some of the work for some of the things you've done. But Brian, you had a thing to add there.
Yeah, the fact that it's just the two of us is something that's very conscious because we realize that the way we operate is very risky. We put all our life savings in order to start the brand new conference, and we really maxed out all of our credit cards, for example. If I have employees, I cannot do that. I cannot have somebody else's healthcare and stability be a source of my risk or my not taking a risk. I can risk us. I can risk what's happening for our family, but not beyond that.
Yep.
And so that is that's the main reason why it's just the two of us.
Which is really cool because it allows you to chase some crazy ideas and do the ideas that you have, and not necessarily have to lean on someone else's ideas for things, or that you have a little more openness to not have to meet client briefs on some stuff. And we're going to take a look at Brand New Conference right now. Let's hop in and let's talk about one of the branches, and that is the events that you do. There are a couple events, and what are the current events that you all put on?
Yep, right now we have the Brand New Conference, which is a 2-day event with speakers from all around the world talking about branding, their trajectory in their career, life, what led them to be branding designers, what they think, how they think, and the work that they do. We've been doing that since 2010. We took obviously a break during the pandemic. And then first round
is a showcase of 12 local designers, small firms, large firms, a variety, presenting that first round of creative to the client. So they use their original decks and basically sharing how they go about selling the design work that they are making for their clients. So that everybody gets a bit of an education of how everybody else is doing it, because we do not get that exposure on the day-to-day.
Yeah, and it's really cool to have the sides and kind of the divisions of these events, that you have the first round of kind of really hands-on, really behind the scenes, kind of maybe low key, a little bit less like of the polished, I'm speaking at a design conference, and more of like, hey, here's a peek behind the curtain. And then you have Brand New Conference, which I've always told people that, like, if you want a designer's design conference, it's Brand New. Like, there is nothing that meets the level of that. And I love that you've kind of segmented that. Is there a strategy behind segmenting those communities, or kind of speaking to those, or how did you decide to have two events and not just, a bigger Brand New conference?
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, it was very conscious because we had the Brand New Conference first. So as I mentioned, since 2010, and that has grown in scope, ambition, the amount of energy, time we spend into it, the appreciation of the audience of it, and like it's a show. Like it requires months of planning, months of preparation, doing stuff, and then we wanted first round to be quicker and not in the sense that it takes less energy or less effort or less consciousness, but it's more about how can it's a little bit more, as you mentioned, it's more hands-on, it's more technical, it's more it's less precious in a way, and it's all about getting into that frame of mind where it's just we're here to learn, share, and like the ugly stuff, the fun stuff, the things that we can learn from.
And not only that, but make it super accessible, because the biggest knowledge gap is within a younger design industry. Designers who are on their first, second, third job, starting their own firms, starting to figure out how to run teams, and the lack of exposure from senior mentors of this is how we sell the deck to the client is minimal at this point. So it's a way of making that information super accessible at a very low price point. And by that, we're stripping down the coffees and all of the fancy stuff that a conference usually brings. We don't have sponsors, all of these things that are really detractors from all of this knowledge and information that you're there to get from your local speakers, so that you can eventually network with them and reach out to them after the conference as well.
That's really cool. And I love the idea of being able to make things accessible. I think that we have talked already a little bit, and we'll talk more about this idea of kind of, the tide rises and all boats rise with it, that you really are trying to invest into the community to help everyone be more creative. Has that always been a focus and a passion for you? Is that something that, like, as you started doing your own stuff, you realized that other people might need help too? Or where does that ideal come from of trying to make things accessible, of trying to help people be more creative?
I mean, the ideal, I think, is in a way a given. The responsibility comes from, it's just the two of us. We don't have corporate coffers that we have to fill. We do need to break a profit, but we're not here to make bank. So we can keep our prices low. We can keep a lot of the work that we do hands-on, so we don't have to outsource a lot of things. And by doing so, we manage to keep it accessible, which is a value, but most of all is our responsibility.
And then
So,
in
oh, go ahead.
terms of like in terms of the desire of why do it, I think it's so because we're designers, we've always done either the events or the online publications that we would like to see. So we've always created for us, not selfishly, but for us in the sense that we sort of think we feel like we know what other designers want because we've been designers, and we are graphic designers, so we sort of create the content that we ourselves would want to see.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit with that transition about kind of giving back and helping people be more creative. And this will transition kind of to the other branch. Excuse me. And that is brand new. For those in the creative community that are in chat, you're probably familiar with brand new. One of the biggest kind of resources for designers. I know when I was in design school and learning, this was like the stop. This is on a lot of people's morning reading lists, is the bookmark that they open is brand new to get started with the day. Tell us a little bit about what this is for those that aren't familiar, and kind of what is your cadence? What do you do here?
All right, so Brand New is a daily publication where we post about logo and identity redesigns or introductions of new designs of mostly, we try to keep it to major, quote unquote, major companies, products, or services that people all around the world will recognize. It doesn't always work that way because, there's only so many Airbnbs, Googles, IBMs that are going to redesign on any given year, but we try to maintain things that everybody can relate to. So, we're not going to feature a local burger joint that no one knows about, but a regional chain or a national chain, that's where we would put our focus on. And it's basically for the 90% of the content on there, I've written it. And I don't say that as a bragging point. It's just something that has happened in my life. And I found myself that for the past 16, 17 years, I've been writing almost daily all the opinions about logos.
I started, but I had kids and that didn't work out.
Yeah, it's a bad combination trying to write about logos and having kids. And then, recently we've introduced a regular rotation of guest writers once a week. But yeah, if you want to keep up with what's going on in the logo identity and branding world, day-to-day changes, things that are happening in the industry, if it's out there, we're going to cover it. If not first, we're going to cover it best and at some point.
That is such a great call out, because I do believe that's very true. That, you'll see the case studies posted and marketing talking about whoever, and I'll usually just go and see, is Brand New talked about this yet? Like there's a lot of articles, but you always have kind of that insight. And I think that you give your opinions, but you do it in a way that is beneficial for people to really understand what's happening within the context of the industry. And so, Armin, this is probably more of a question for you. How have you maintained this cadence, generating content and sharing your thoughts is a lot. And how do you maintain that cadence of talking about things, finding things, and how do you kind of bring yourself to share your thoughts on all the things? Do you ever have imposter syndrome of like, why am I talking about this? Or how do you stay fresh with Brand New?
Yeah, it's funny because I think early on, I was too full of myself and I thought I knew better than everyone else. So at first I had a false sense of confidence that gave me the bravado to just write about logos. Like, hey, I can write my opinion about this and people will care about my opinion because it is the best opinion. Then eventually, that I matured, thankfully. And then through that first initial phase, I think it just became something that I was able to do in a very quick way. Like I was able to see something, formulate thoughts, and write about it in a way that explain what I was seeing, explain what I was feeling, but also explain what could be right or wrong about it so that others could apply those same thoughts to their own work. Yeah, and I think nowadays, again, like I've been doing this for 16 years, so it really is, just a reflex that is all about the routine and the consistency and like the way that it works. Not to get, I'll briefly get into it, but not too deeply. So I'll choose a project at like 4 p.m. the day before. I'll start prepping up the images, reading about the press release and all that stuff. Prepare all the images in order that I want them, and then I do other stuff, and then I go to sleep. Then I wake up at 5 a.m. and then this may sound sad to a lot of people, but the moment that I put my feet on the ground, it's like, okay, what am I writing about today? X. Okay. Then I go make coffee, look at the images again, and then just start writing. So there's no real, like,
it all happens in the middle of the night
Yeah.
somehow at this point.
So
It's automatic.
it simmers, and yeah, it's a little bit just like you shoot 1,000 free throws every day. Eventually, you're just gonna make a bunch of them. So that's just like my approach. It's just like keep doing it. Sometimes I'm gonna miss some, and sometimes people disagree. But for the most part, people are like, yeah, that makes sense. So I try to just be as rational as possible with just enough of an emotion to keep people engaged.
And I love the thoughts that you have when you're sleeping are usually the best ideas. There's so many times when I'm like, I think I thought about this idea like while I was asleep and woke up and was like, there it is. That's what it is. And then it like comes to you in the shower. That's usually how it works. So let's hop in and kind of transition and talk about, we've talked about you talking about design a lot, but there also is a lot of really creative stuff that you all do. And so I want to show kind of a gamut of the years of Brand New Conference. It really is a flagpole moment, I feel like, for you, that it's always this very inspirational and kind of I can see all the things you've taken in through the year writing for Brand New, and you synthesize and then toss it into a project with everything that you possibly could for the theming or application of these different conferences. So I'm gonna hop over, and we're over here on Behance. If you want to go check out on Behance, just right here, behance.net/UCLLC. For those of you that are watching on Behance, it's a real easy click. If you're watching over on YouTube, come on over to Behance, say hi to us. But let's talk first. Do you have a favorite year? So that's the first question, and then I'll follow up with kind of just like general approach. Do you have a favorite year of Brand New Conference theming?
I think that 2018, the concrete jungle in New York is my personal favorite,
Okay.
just because of the "you did what?"
Yes, cool.
expression
Let's
that comes
start
out
there.
of everybody, and how I saw attendees kind of incredulously working through the program, working through the fact, oh wait, I have a piece of concrete hanging from my neck. How did this happen? So there was that side. And then there was also the production side, which was the year I learned how to make molds, because I tried to have the molds made so that I could cast a concrete, and the mold companies told me they could not do it. And anything that I requested was either badly done, or they told me it was impossible. And I don't like the word impossible. So we had these little paper cubes, for example, with recessed letters. They told me that was impossible. I made 16 molds. I still have some of those. And those cubes are my little prized possession just because of that.
Okay, so let's hop in here and take a look at some of this work. And for those of you watching, hopefully this is a really good insight on this concept that, like you said, nothing's impossible. You can figure it out. And if you ever watch Adobe Live, you know that we always talk about there's no right or wrong way to do things. We teach you a ton of stuff on this programming. There's a lot of tutorials, a lot of how to do X, Y, and Z in Illustrator, but there's no wrong way to do it. If you get to the product that works for you and looks good, we don't care how you do it. It really is all about finding that creative spark and realizing that vision. So let's hop in and look a little bit about this case study. Can you talk to us a little bit about the concept, kind of the approach here, and where we landed with this project?
Yeah, the concept is like the dumbest thing possible. It's like New York is the concrete jungle. Okay, so
How cliche is that?
And that's what we should try to do, like find a cliche or something that's so basic about the city that we're going to that everybody recognizes, but then how do you explode that into something more interesting? So, like in this case, what we're looking at is just like the inscriptions on a lot of the buildings in New York. So, once you start marrying concrete with something that's unique to New York, and like, okay, we can do sort of that inscription kind of typography, which is not too elaborate, and we can create molds out of it. So that's sort of and I think was concrete the one where we were on the way back from Chicago and you were like, maybe we should use concrete.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We're-
Yeah. So like that's the extent of our concepting and brainstorming session. Like our design thinking, we don't do post-its. We will sit down right after the conference, like we're driving on the way back.
Yeah. The Saturday after the conference is the most dangerous day of the year.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, because we're riding a high and we're like, we can do whatever we want for the next 5 years. And then like a month later, like, what did we write down that we're going to do? It's like, it's too much. But yeah, no, a lot of the times, a lot of the concepts are just like, what if we did this? And then we either try to retrofit a concept or evolve it or just make it make sense. Like we never do anything just for the sake of it.
Yep. And going back in here, I love this concept of what if there was no logo? This, I think, was I think at the time, 2018, this was kind of a revolutionary idea because we were seeing like the blanding of everything. Everything was kind of like brand, and simplifying. And I love this concept of like, what if we didn't? And it seems that your approach to a lot of things is that idea of kind of just what if? Did you have a time where you were stuck in like, oh, this is what it needs to be when you're working with clients? And how did you transition into this general, like, what if zone?
I think part of it is just the challenge and the privilege of designing for designers, right? You have a creative audience on the other end, so you can push those boundaries and you can question materials and you can play with legibility and with the design rules in general in a way that you can't in a client setting necessarily. And our audience has embraced that and is now like, okay, what's next? What other questionable item are you going to put in my path in the future? And so now it's a vicious circle that we have there. But I think that it stems from working towards an audience that is very open-minded.
Do you
But
think?
then to answer your question, as it relates to most people in the audience that do design work for clients, I have the sad news that when you're stuck, sometimes that's it. Like you're like, all right, I'm stuck. Let's just try to push this through to the finish line as best as we can, and maybe not as creatively as we set out to do. And sometimes you do that, and sometimes you find you have to say like, right, let's start over. Like it's not a change of scope of work. It's just this is our bad. We need to figure out how to make this work. So we've been in both situations where it's just like, all right, look, we didn't get to where we all wanted to go the first time around. Either we take another shot or we're just like, all right, you know what? Let's just go with the path of least resistance and get.
Or a couple times we've also walked away and said, maybe this is not the right relationship in the sense that we cannot deliver what you're asking for.
Yep. And as I'm scrolling through here, the applications are just so wild on this. Do you ever feel, and we'll look at some of the other ones kind of as we go through, do you feel like you have to keep one-upping yourself? Is there like an intimidation of like, oh my gosh, how far into the stratosphere can we go? And do you hit creative block there, or is that like inspiring to push yourself further?
Both. Because yes, we always want that sense of awe to arrive when people sign up for the conference, and especially when they see the website and they kind of get a sense of where it might go, but surprise them with how we transitioned from the digital to the physical, and how we translated the design in that regards. But yes, we're constantly pushing our own limits and questioning our sanity in the process, because by pushing the boundaries higher and higher, like that concrete, I cast concrete for 3 hours a day, 6 days a week for 6 months.
Ooh.
It overtook our entire workshop. It was insane. That was a lot. And we always say, we're not doing that again. This year, it was the exact same thing with the pizzas for Chicago. It was just 17-hour days of moving water and paper and kettlebells and pushing weights and doing all kinds of stuff in order to make that program. It will always continue to be that way.
Yep.
And the other thing that happens is that with each year we get new toys or we learn new techniques. So like we'll buy like a model, like the mold maker. So now we have that. At some point we got a laser cutter. So now that's become an integral part of what we do. We've been playing with resin, as you can see here.
Never mix oil and resin.
Yeah.
This is one of those where like you do it and then you're like, have we flown too close to the sun? Pizza resin. We
like I told Brian, this was my idea. Like, what if we put if we make an actual pizza with the actual ingredients and make it frozen in time, like in Jurassic Park? And it's just like, no, don't never do that again.
Well, no, but the answer was, ooh, let's try that.
Yes, which I love that it is that open possibility. Have you developed just that approach throughout the years? Do you ever have an idea that you're like, oh, that's just not going to work? Or have you kind of moved into, we have to try everything now? Like the ideas have landed that have been crazy, so now we have to try everything.
I wouldn't say we have to try everything, but anything that sounds interesting, we will try. But we will have a lot of ideas, and half the time we're like, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. This needs a little bit more work. We need to keep thinking about this a little bit longer. And then we reach a point where we're like, okay, now we try this.
Yes. And this will kind of transition to something else I want to talk about is you work with a lot of collaborators on these, and we'll look at the rebrand that just happened. But what is it like for you? And again, these are incredible. I love the idea that every year you just explore the what ifs of everything. And whenever I see the case study come, I'm like, I know it's not just going to be a thing of like, oh, here's the conference branding. It's like, here's 900 things that we've kind of created this world around it. And I always think that's so interesting. But I know for a lot of these, you work with collaborators. What is it like collaborating with others to kind of help execute your creative vision that you have spent so much time, you have so much hands-on, and then maybe you're working with an animator, you're working with other designers. What's it like to share that vision, and how do you kind of balance that workflow?
Well, first we have to disclaim that up until 2022, with the one in Austin, we had never brought anyone in. It was all done by us. I think we had hired maybe an animator once or twice for the like opening titles.
There was the sign painter in 2011.
Oh yeah, sign. Yeah, I think maybe that's what put us off in 2000. One of the early conferences, we hired a sign painter to do some lettering. It was a mess. But yeah, no, I think again, I think with maturity comes a sense of like, hey, this could actually be better if we don't try to do everything ourselves, because we're stubborn as hell. We're control freaks, which is not a good way to lead a life or be a designers, but that's where we are.
But that also comes with financial maturity, where you feel confident enough in how we've budgeted for each of these events and be like, okay, we can afford to hire somebody and pay them properly, because that's really important to us, and not be like, hey, I have $500. Will you do, 8 hours of animations for me? No, that is not fair. So having the financial stability and maturity was the other half of that equation of saying, okay, time to step out of ourselves, trying to make it all, and hire somebody who is actually very good at this and we can learn from and collaborate.
Yep. Yeah, so this one, the one that we're looking at right now, the one in Austin, this is the first time that we've actually collaborated with someone to a degree that they shaped the look of the identity way more than we did. And this was done by Gio, of course, who's a big Adobe guy and just salt and jump. So he was able to bring in something that we couldn't do, an energy, an aesthetic, just a sensibility that we just didn't have. A style that was very appropriate for the concept of Keep Austin Weird. So again, like that's the cliche, but then how do you really make it weird? You bring in Gio.
Yep.
And then how do you translate that into the physical? you learn how to make rubber.
Yes, exactly. And chat, if you want to, we actually had Gio on just last month to do this kind of look and show you how he uses Illustrator in combination with After Effects to create this weird, wonky, crazy type. And so Cody, who's our moderator, if you can find that stream, it is one of our Thursday streams with Gio. It is very much like this time lapse. You can kind of see behind the scenes, see how a lot of his process works, how he works in this. It really is as simple as an Illustrator After Effects combo and a lot of slamming together and a lot of time and a whole lot of keyframes. So go check out, I'll put Cody to go find that stream, or chat if somebody else can find it, put that there as well. And as always, this is an Adobe live stream, which means that you can ask your questions. If you have questions for our friends, please put them in chat as we go through here. We're going to keep talking, keep looking at some more work, but we want to make sure that your questions are being answered as well. So drop them into chat. All right, back to converting this to rubber, which is a transition that I never thought I'd have to make. But let's go back. We had this look. We have the Keep Austin Weird, tons of different executions of this in a bunch of different ways.
It's hard to restrain it.
It is. And I love the way that you each year set a context and then just let it kind of live within that context. And I think this is the most context setting version that you've done, is that the concept is so simple that it is type that is weird and wobbly. And then everywhere that you put it is like, cool, how do we make it weird and wobbly? We have, you know, signs, we have booklets, we have all these different things. What is the weird wobbly version of that? And so I love the explorations of finding that and seeing social media and then moving again into this chaos of working with rubber. There he is.
You can see there we went from the sample size to the test size to the, okay, we mean business size.
So tell us a little bit about this and the process and kind of how in the world does this exist?
So thinking rubber bands, thinking, you know, those stretchy bands that you get for physical therapy, we knew a material like that had to exist. And we couldn't find one that we could cut into the shapes that we wanted exactly. So there we start making molds again. And I tested several compounds, basically, where you're mixing compound A and B in the same way that you do resin, but there's different variables of how the viscosity and how stretchy it is and how it behaves after 16 hours or 36 hours. And so this is all us now filling up our little molds. Armin would mix the compounds and put them into these giant syringes that I found. And I would use the syringes to fill them in. And again, it becomes a process of every morning. This is what we did for a couple of hours for several months. You had to let them cure. There's all my syringes. We went through about a dozen syringes per session and created all of these letters exactly the way we wanted them. And they were stretchy and they were kind of gently adhesive on one side just by nature. And so we were able to just put them on the covers and on the badges and on things, and they would stick. And then you could peel them off and put them back on. And if you start to lose stickiness, we figured out, you know, a little rubbing alcohol, we'll clean it off and you can start again.
This is so just crazy. It's just crazy that this exists, but like inspirational. And for those that maybe are getting stuck, that watch and are just learning design, I think that there are these levels of like, you are in the open stratosphere of like, you understand the tools, you're experimenting, you're kind of pushing the envelope. Do you have any advice for people that are maybe seeing this, that I think, you know, people watch conference talks and see these like astronomical projects and they're like, oh man, that feels so unattainable for where they are. Do you have any advice for people that are kind of just growing into maybe this zone, or just starting out, or just learning the tools? Do you have any advice to get them to this place, or to help them kind of stay creative and not be intimidated by looking at work like this?
Yeah, I think it's all about baby steps. Like, you know, right now what you're seeing is mostly the finished process, the result of a lot of research and development. And the videos that we're showing are like the optimized version, where we found the optimal spacing between each mold so that we don't have to move as much, so that we can do it as quickly. So a lot of it is just, you know, take on one aspect of any project first, just like solve one thing. And like, okay, I've done that. How do I move on to the next? How do I expand it into A, B, and C? or, what is the jump into X or Y. So it's really just about, you know, taking it slow, methodical, and experimenting. You can't imagine something in your head and put it on the page or put it on a website or put it on a desk, whatever. You have to go through the process of like things that you imagine are going to work out a specific way. Sometimes they don't when you do it. So a lot of it is just like taking that time that you're going to fail through prototypes and just testing it until you can get it right.
But I would take it even one step back, and that is first you have to question. There were two moments in earlier conferences that kind of defined where we are right now. One was we wanted yellow handles on white paper bags, and obviously that didn't exist anywhere. And so we hand dipped all of the paper bags in a can of yellow paint and let them dry. And so that taught us we can actually get things done in a simple way for something that we find value in, those yellow handles, even though everybody's telling us that doesn't exist. And another moment was we quoted cutting some larger pieces of wood into badge size. And the carpenter was like, yes, I can cut 1,000 of those for you for $3,000. And I was like, that is very bad use of my money. Thank you so much. I went to Home Depot. We bought a machine for $300 and we've used it pretty much every single conference since. So the ROI is intense. But basically it's questioning, why do I need to spend $3,000 on this one task if it's something that I could possibly do in a different way? And that really spiraled for us. And so the need to question the process and the approach of every step of everything that you're trying to do can be integral to that process.
This is just so like I'm just scrolling, and the fact that you like have this much stuff to show is just so cool and inspirational. And the fact that you're showing stuff like this, that you're showing the behind the scenes, you're sharing your process, you're sharing how you're doing things, is your passion for kind of uplifting the design community through brand new featuring articles, but then also the way that you do case studies is so in depth. How do you go about building this case study, and what are you choosing to include? Are there things you're like, oh, I don't want to give away that secret? Or like, how are you building these case studies, and how do you kind of start to figure out, this is how I want to show the world who maybe wasn't there what happened and how we wanted to communicate this world?
Yeah, I think that like the first thing I will say is that we never hold anything back. Nothing is a secret. In fact, it's the opposite. Whenever people are like, what compound did you use for the rubber? Like, here's the link, here's the quantities, here's how long you need to cure it for. Just like whatever it is, like we're never trying to hold anything back. And then in terms of like the case studies, we start documenting all of our process from day one. Like, even
We've gotten better at that every year.
So each year we start, we start sooner to sort of chronicle what we're doing. And that just allows us to tell a story of what we went through, because we go through a lot. From here until October 10 and 11, when the next conference is, there's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of questioning. There's a lot of like,
and a lot of laughter too.
We laugh. It's a good time, but it's hard. And because we're out here in Bloomington, Indiana, all by ourselves, like no one sees it. Mm-hmm. So it's a dumb thing to compare it to, but if a tree falls and no one hears it, doesn't make a sound. Like here's the same way. Like if we go through all this trouble and no one sees it, or well, only the 1,000 people that went to the conference see it. How else can we inspire the broader design community to see what happens here, so that they in turn can be like, hey, if those two people can do it in their garage, in their basement, in their driveway, I can do it too.
So let me ask a question on that as a follow-up. Has there been something that, and you just said it, that you're trying to put stuff out there to inspire people, to challenge people, to try to push the envelope of creativity by seeing the depth of work and the work that you put into it. Has there been something that either of you have seen as of late, or maybe in the last 10 years, that's been that inspiring to you on the other side? You're like, whoa, this project, this person pushed this so far that like our minds exploded. Because you kind of are some of the leaders in this like what can happen? Let's try something experimenting. Is there something that you've seen that's inspired you on the other side?
I think one example that's not particularly exact, it would be Jessica Hish opening 2 retail stores. Like that's bonkers. In this economy, to launch 2 stores, it just seems wild. But I think it's that kind of uh, kind of like lateral thinking. Like everybody's going online, and then Jessica like, no, I'm going to put up a store, and I'm going to make people come here and look at the things physically and engage with me. So I think that kind of thing, to me, is we're like, oh,
Yep.
okay, like it's someone going against the current, even their own current. Like Jessica has built, she doesn't need to have 2 stores. But she's still there. It's that drive to be like, what else can I do? How can I do something different that fulfills this weird itch that I have within me that must sort of come out in such different ways.
Yeah, and I think this was I was at a conference. She was speaking about this, and she was talking, and I was like, okay, cool. She's like, selling things online. She's like starting an online shop, and then she started showing pictures, and I was like, what? Like, it's an actual physical shop, and I think that it is that almost chasing and understanding your brand and what you do in the core of that. And Jessica opening a shop is so on brand for Jessica. Like it feels so Jessica to do that. And I think for you, it feels so brand new to have these, crazy ideas that you're chasing. How have you refined the brand new brand and like the standard that you have set for yourselves? Is it something that you have to like check yourselves on, or is it something that's kind of just become intrinsic in the way that you create at this point?
You mean for the conference or for the blog or for both?
For the conference, let's talk about the conference for those projects. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the conference is just a matter of like realizing that it's a branding identity for brand designers that must represent creativity in some way. So a lot of it
and are looking for some inspiration.
Yeah. So it really is just about how do we set ourselves up to create an identity for an event that people want to attend, that the identity for the event becomes sort of a part of the experience. And it's really just all about, kind of like a lot of it is just kind of like we painted ourselves into a corner, and how do we paint ourselves out in interesting ways?
And I think another aspect of that is, you have all of these materials and you go to most conferences and you see these materials in the trash cans at the venue. If you're lucky at the hotel, everything gets tossed. So from the very beginning, we want it to be sustainable or more sustainable, but not necessarily by using, recycled paper and the right inks every time, but mostly by creating things that people would want to keep, archival items that would become collectible. And that has happened. All of these items people still have in their offices or in their homes. And so they're not ending up in the trash cans. And that's another key driver to create something that our audience will want to keep for a long time.
Yes, which speaking to that, I still have my stuff from Vegas when I went to the brand new conference in Vegas. Still got it. So yes, that does happen and that does work. And they are things that people put up as display, which I love that idea of kind of making things sustainable, making something special, and almost like giving people a vehicle to hang their memories on. The experience of going to a brand new conference is so great. And then you have this really memorable coat hook to think about all the times you had there. Like I think of going to karaoke with Amy and Jen Hood and like running around Vegas and going to the conference. When I see the little badges that I have hung up and I see a little badge, I'm like, oh, all these memories are tied to that visual. And I love that you kind of are building those for people to take home and hopefully take those memories and experiences and inspiration with them. So I pulled up here. You recently went through a rebrand for brand new, big, huge undertaking. Let's talk a little bit about this. And do you want to kind of just talk me maybe through the process, the reasoning, why was it time for a rebrand? And I'll kind of scroll and we can kind of talk as we go through. And Chad, if you want to scroll along with us, you can check this out on Behance. Again, you can just go to behance.net/UCLLC and it's right there for you to engage with. Go leave a like, get a little appreciation right there. So let's walk through and let's talk.
Yeah, so 2022, after the Austin conference, as Bryony mentioned, like that Saturday is the danger zone because like we start coming up with crazy ideas. So we're like, what do we want to do what do we want to do next? And at that point, we're like, I think brand new could use a new coat of paint in the sense that we had sort of transitioned into the subscription model. We had been doing really well in terms of, keeping that like a core audience, but how do we reflect that growth, and how do we also reflect our change as the platform changed once we moved into the subscription model?
And also the legacy of 15 years of the blog, and how can we plan towards the next 15 years of the blog.
Yep. And again, and it's funny, I'm looking at these logos and the way they went through and thinking through like my experiences with them and those memories tied to it, that there is a lot that, again, brand new is something that people look at creatives every morning or once a week, or they kind of make it a regular. And looking back at these and thinking through, like seeing this one when I was in design school and looking for inspiration for a project, and then seeing this one when I'm like trying to like make my way, figure out how can I like market better. And then now we're here in this new era. Can you talk a little bit about the approach, the thought that went into this, kind of the behind the scenes creative of how do we even start with rebranding something like this?
So if you want to hold there,
Yep.
I'll tell you again the extent of our conceptual phase. An email came in from Ferry Jones Type announcing a new typeface. I was like, ooh, that's cool. I wonder what brand new looks like set in that typeface. I set it in. I'm like, ooh, that's interesting how the R and the A could be close together. I brought it into I took a screenshot, brought it into Photoshop, like, oh, I can bring in the R and A together. And even better, I can bring the D and the N together. Ligatures galore, but this looks like crap. I mean, the typeface is great, but the actual ligatures look terrible. So
yep. And I love seeing and knowing where it ended, and then seeing this to where you have that check of like, is it? And you're like, yeah, maybe. It's not a no. Like, I don't hate it, is what I hear from designers so much. So we got the really rough sketch. We're looking at the type. Where do we go from here once we are kind of pulling pieces together and deciding there is something here?
yeah, so I think the first realization is knowing that we cannot do this. That, we're good at using type, but we're not good at creating type from scratch.
Especially new ones like that.
And especially when you have an audience of 30,000 people going to criticize it.
Yes,
so like,
you're putting yourself you're putting yourself up for like comment sections open, everybody.
Yeah. So the like initially the first thought and only thought was like, we need to get Rob Clark on this, who's an amazing typographer and letterer in the UK, who's done a lot of the logos that we've reviewed on Brand New. So we're like, hey, Rob, can you do this idea that we have based on these references that we found? Can you make it awesome? And he was like, yes, I can do that. And yeah, we went through, like a bunch of explorations, a lot of refinement. And then there it is. It just, it gave us something that, like, we've always wanted a strong, amazing word mark. And we never quite got there with those first two tries. They were fine. They were not great by any means, but this time around we wanted something to reflect sort of like the maturity of both of us, as well as the website, as well as the industry, and sort of our standing within it, that we don't take for granted. We take it very seriously, that we do want to represent how people see us, and we felt that we weren't measuring up to that standard. So that's why we wanted to get the best. Rob Clark was the best option, and he delivered.
Well, and using those ligatures was a way also of pushing the industry into being a little uncomfortable with something. A ligature between an R and an A is a bit of a stretch. But that sparks a conversation, sparks a reaction, and that's really what it's all about.
Yep. And that was my first thought when I first saw it, was this idea of like, you're not supposed to do that, but somehow they did. And I love that kind of, that it is the challenge to the creative industry of, again, that very on-brand thing for you of what if what was supposed to be wrong could be done right, and doing things until it's where it needs to be. And it looks good, even though it may be technically wrong, it works and it's exactly what it needs to be. And I love what you said about having something that's like editorial. This is so like magazine title, like it's just got that oomph that I think has always been there for Brand New. And so I want to ask and talk a little bit too, that we have the logo, great. We're going to put the logo, you know, in the header of the website. What's next? How do we build this out? And why are you building this out? What's kind of like, we have the thing, what else can we do with it? Why are we kind of building out this case study?
Yeah, then at that point, it becomes about figuring out where this needs to exist, which is basically social media. You know, if we want to do merch, what happens to the full logo if we need to put it somewhere smaller? So one thing was creating a small use logo. The other thing was creating this monogram, because a lot of people will, when I get emails, people will be like, hey, BN, or instead of like, they don't say Brand New. Like a lot of people do refer to us as BN. So we wanted to build on that as well. And then, yeah, just a color palette that was more exciting, more engaging, and figuring out how to, you know, tell a story that's, you know, designy, but not overly designed, and that's interesting, but doesn't overpower the work that we're showing.
But I think an important part was also developing a voice, because for 15, 16 years, you know, it was always us adding and making adjustments and changing the header here or there, but it was always a very like in our heads communication, and in that finding that maturity and wanting to focus on what the next 10, 15 years looks like, we brought in a Ragged Edge to kind of put a lens on us and help us develop a better way of communicating, not only the things that are in our head and are so part of our system that we don't see what is being miscommunicated or not communicated in the right way. And that was very, very rewarding to see that what we're trying to communicate, you know, one, we can do so in a more exciting way, but it is reaching the outside.
Yep. And the Full of Opinions tote is the best tote I've ever seen. We see a lot of totes in our world, and Full of Opinions is, again, the perfect understanding of what the brand is, what it can bring, what the community is that you've built, and having that nice little kind of tongue in cheek. So I do want to transition. We got about 3 minutes left. And I think that we want to talk about something that is on the way a little bit. We talked a little bit about Brand New Conference, talked a little bit about first round, and I don't even know what's on the way, but I know that we wanted to talk about maybe a little preview of something on the way.
Yeah, well, there's a whole other audience that we, you know, we're focused on the first round audience as we talked about, and the Brand New audience is a whole other group, although there is some overlap, but there's an underserved group within the design industry that's also,
which is the in-house brand teams. So I think there's been a big shift in the industry over the last 10, 15 years, and more closely in the last 5 years, where in-house teams at companies have just grown tremendously in their ability of what they can do, and the quality of the work and the value that they bring to their business,
and the value that the business sees in the team.
Yeah,
that's really integral.
Yeah, so you know, last year we started the blog In-House in Focus, which it's been a slow pace of publishing just because it takes a lot of time to put each feature together on the in-house teams end. So we figured, what if we do that as a conference? So we're going to do the in-house, in focus, in person in 2025, Dallas, Texas. It's going to be a 2-day conference, just featuring in-house, focusing on the in-house experience, whether you're a solo, whether you're the only brand manager, brand designer, brand intern at a team, or whether you're the CMO managing 100 other people and everything in between. So we want to share those experiences across 2 days from all kinds of industry, sizes, regions of the world, etc.
That's going to be so fun and so cool. So you have a million things. We have the Brand New Conference, we got the first round, and now this new in-house in focus. Last question, we got about a minute left. How do you find balance through all this? How are you staying creative, but also finding balance for regular life?
Now, I think
there is no division there's nothing to balance because it's everything for us. It is just full throttle, throw all at it, life, work, whatever. It's just all in the same cart.
Yeah, and it's just all about finding a rhythm that works for you, and in this case for us, it's just it's work, work, work. Take care of our health and take care of our kids and our 4 dogs, and just try to do the best that you can each day. Just trying to survive and trying to have fun at the same time.
That's what it is. Try to survive and try to have fun. Thanks for joining us. Everybody, stick around. There is another great community show coming up right after this. And thank you so much to Armin and Bryony for joining us. We will see you another time right here on Adobe Live. Bye, everybody.
Bye.